Neil, what do you think about the flat Earth, man? You think the Earth is flat? Yes or no? I'm thinking no, but our caller Pedro is gonna have a great talk with us, I think.
Oh boy,
Pedro, are you there, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys? I am here.
Hey,
Thank
great.
you for
thank
having
you,
me.
Peter.
We are glad to have you on. It sounds like you have a couple of thoughts on space and the Earth, and we love to hear it, man. What do you got for us?
Yeah, that's correct. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out to Ethan Michaels. Such a great dude. Thank you for always having me.
I agree.
Yeah, he's got you fooled. I mean, yeah, Ethan's awesome.
It's those shirts. That's what does it. It tricks everybody.
Yeah.
But Pedro, what's up, man? What do you want to talk about?
Okay. So I guess I'll start off with I'll go with the whole space. I'll lean towards the space situation where I think it's fraudulent. Everything that they tell us about space, like
what makes you
satellites,
think that?
meteorites, space planets, the moon, all that is just, it's not what they're telling us.
I have a piece of meteorite.
Yeah.
So the thing about meteorites, so if you notice, like if you're standing and you drop a basketball, it falls straight down. So why is it that when you see meteorites in the sky, they're flying parallel to the Earth? They're never falling straight down.
Because that's how they entered the atmosphere. They were coming at us from an angle to begin with.
Yeah, but why is it always at an angle parallel, like an equal sign to the Earth, instead of falling straight down? You drop a down. Like
it
they never fall straight down.
Pedro, hang on just a second. Again, I don't think either Neil or I. You're not Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? That's not you, Neil. You're not.
No,
Tyson.
that's a different Neil.
Okay. Just making sure. But neither Neil or I are physicists or anything. But you're a chemist, right?
Yeah, I'm a chemist. Yes.
Okay, so not a physicist. Calm down. But
no.
But I think both of us have a decent enough understanding on this. Like, for instance, one thing I could say is that, like, your basketball doesn't fall perfectly straight, right? It just kind of looks like that because of your perspective.
Yeah.
Ooh, the name of the show. And the same thing is true for those meteorites and stuff, man. It's not actually perfectly parallel to the ground. It just kind of looks like that because you're a little dot on a massive ball. Does that kind of make sense? Or,
well, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say, but at the same time, it just doesn't really make sense because, like, I gave the perfect example as, like, if you drop a basketball or you shoot something up, it falls straight down. It never falls parallel to the Earth.
But
I do understand that maybe sometimes I'm just playing along. Sometimes meteorites you could say that they do fall out of at an angle, but
they always do. Usually,
ever see one fall straight down? That's just kind of like sketchy. And another thing about meteorites,
but it's got momentum and velocity. And
it's sketchy because it goes against physics. Like if I drop a pen, it falls straight down.
But Pedro,
anything that will enter Earth.
But hang on, brother. Remember what I just said real quickly right at the beginning, which is it doesn't. You're saying it falls straight down, directly straight. The vector is unchanged.
Right.
Boom. And that we know that's not true. Like, even just based on, like, me saying, if I just said, like, well, what about, like, air resistance? And like, if I drop a piece of paper, it doesn't fall straight down, right? It kind of goes back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because but you can't compare a piece of paper to a piece of rock. It's like two different buoyancies.
You don't think a rock has air resistance? You don't think a rock experiences that resistance when it's traveling through the air, just like a piece of paper does?
It does, but it's got more mass.
Exactly.
But it's more dense. It's more
compact. It's more mass.
But even if it is more massive, even if there is more just stuff crammed into it, right? Because I know that's what mass actually is. It's actually an amount of the material. But even with a greater mass like that, it's still going to be affected by that resistance. It's still going to have that friction. It's still ultimately going to be acted on by a lot of different, like when we do physics equations and stuff, and we take a like little Timmy standing on one side of the picture and he throws the ball and we say, well, the arc of the throw was exactly 14 feet high. And Timmy, how far? When we do that, we often just say like, yeah, 9.8 meters per second squared directly down. But that's only because we're thinking about it on a localized setting. We're not actually taking into account like the full picture because it would just take too long, right? It's like every individual spot on a curve is actually just a straight line. I know it doesn't seem like that.
Towards the center.
Right. And so if we're really, really tiny, which, you know, according to the whole the Earth is a ball thing, we are, and the Earth is like massive, which again, like probably is.
It is.
we would only ever see that one tiny little perspective, right? You see what I'm saying, man?
Yeah, I get it, but I still hold strong in my belief how like meteorites are just like non-existent, as well as like, because
I have
for
one.
example, like there's cameras everywhere, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Why don't cameras ever catch a meteorite hit like a school
They do.
or like an amusement park or like a movie theater?
It does happen.
Like they or like a McDonald's, they just never hit nothing. Like
a meteorite fell into a lady's kitchen just like a handful of months ago in a state out west, if I remember. Yeah, it just fell right through her house. I mean, she was lucky she didn't get hurt. I mean, it does. It happens. It happens all the time.
I just don't believe that anything that comes out in the news, I feel that it's already been scripted. You know, like false flag events, and they got to keep these events going in order to like brainwash people. Because like I said, like most of these meteorites that they catch, like they catch them flying parallel to the Earth, like just never straight down, which is kind of off. It's just weird.
What would be the
some
purpose?
of them do go parallel because they pass us,
right? And what would be the purpose, Pedro, of like what's the end goal here? Let's say for just a second there is a shadowy cabal drinking the whiskey and smoking the big cigars, and they are lying to us. They are lying to us about meteorites. Why? What is their goal? What do they get out of it?
Well, their goal is to put all these small pieces together. Like for example, like another piece that goes with meteorites is like the whole ISS, the International Space Station, like these space agencies, they could barely launch people on rockets, you know, but people forget to think like, how in the world did they fit enough walls and material and metal and screws and all this stuff to build a mansion up in space? And there's no footage of it. You know, they could barely fit people in these rockets. What makes you think that they could like build the whole mansion up there? And it's not like they stuck a mansion in a rocket and shot it up there. Like it must have taken multiple trips, but it's literally impossible. And there's no footage of it.
Real quick, Pedro, how are you calling into us? Just real quick, how are you calling us right now? How are you speaking to us? Is it by cell phone or by the internet?
Yeah, well, by cell phone.
So you know there are satellites up there that are taking care of that for you, right? Like there's a box up in space that like beams down electricity and like wavy stuff. Again, I'm no physicist, but it beams down science magic,
wavy stuff.
And then your science magic phone box thing catches that, and we can do that super reliably. Like we could do that all the time. Like why couldn't they just put a bigger satellite into space?
Well, the thing with like cell phone service, it's done by cell phone towers, and basically there's cell phone towers everywhere, and when it comes to connection, they have giant optic fiber cables running all across the ocean. It's all been
I mean, now we do, mapped out, but we haven't always, and there are definitely lots and
satellite
lots of
phones.
There's definitely lots and lots of things that we use. We use satellite technology for, and other when we
Here's
went
one
to
right here.
Yeah, look.
There's your weather app right there.
Yeah. when we went to the moon a long time ago, they put this little box
information right there.
Yeah, see, and it updates regularly. And if he were to like travel,
the satellites,
yep,
the satellites that most people think of is not really what they think they are. Like, for example, people think that they launch satellites like in rockets, but in reality, they just tie them up with giant helium balloons, and they just float in our atmosphere. It's not really that they're being launched into space. And
hang on just a second, Pedro. Hang on just a second for us. Yeah, Neil, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure.
Okay. A lot of what the you remember, like what do you call them? The old ships that we used to launch that they're no longer in commission.
The shuttles.
Yes, the shuttles.
Yeah. The shuttles.
They were used quite often for putting satellites in orbit.
And also, I would just say that the thing that you're referencing, while there is some basis in truth to that, Facebook actually has done this in a lot of different places around the world that are harder to reach with towers and satellites and so forth. Because like we're so good with satellites, like we can shoot them up into space and we can just tell them to stay put, and just like a well-trained Rottweiler, it will sit there. It's amazing. But like there definitely is a way. We figured this out, which is just a fantastic feat of human achievement, where yeah, we can just put these, again, just smart science-y magic boxes, that's the way I see them, on weather balloons, and then just let them float up into high we can do this. We've done that. Facebook has done this. They have created.
I get that, but that's not satellites.
No, right. No. Those are not, they are totally separate things. They are totally separate. But technically, yes, those weather balloons can allow people to access the internet, but those aren't what we're talking about when we say satellites.
Right.
And then also when it comes to satellites, if you try to Google an image of a satellite, there's never a real picture. They're all just like cartoonish, CGI photographs. You know what I'm saying? Like there's nothing real about it. It's not just like, if you want to believe in that, it's like you're believing in cartoons.
It's not a belief. There are satellites. They are factually in space, and every image you see on the internet is a CGI image, because the computer has to generate that image, including me and Secular Rarity right here. We are computer generated images that you're seeing right now, but I'm real.
Right.
Yeah.
And
but what I mean by CGI is that they were like, for example, like they were done, like they don't exist, and they were just like modified and created in a program to look real.
So would you say that? Have you seen that famous photo of like another great Neil? Gosh, we're just talking about all the Neils tonight, but another great Neil, Mr. Armstrong. That photo of him like standing supposedly, let's say, on the moon. What do you say to the experts what do you say to the experts that say there's literally no way whatsoever, like not even a chance of a possibility that photo could have been recreated? What do you say to that?
Well, when it comes to whole like Neil Armstrong and like the moon landing, I don't believe in it whatsoever. It's super Hollywood to me, because there's footage of like the shuttle arriving there, and I was like, how did the camera get there before the shuttle?
But
you know what I'm saying, like,
but hang on. We can talk about, hang on, Pedro. We can talk about anything else you want after we get an answer to this, because this is actually incredibly crucial. But just doing a little bit of, again, no expert, but doing a very small amount of research, I found why that photo completely disproves anybody that makes the claim space isn't real, the moon isn't real, the earth is flat, we never went to the moon. I know that answer, and I'll give it to you, but I want to know why. I want to know why you think it was faked first. I want to know what you say to the people who would say it's totally real. We definitely had to go to the moon.
So what's your question again? I'm sorry.
There's a photo, a very famous photo of Neil Armstrong standing on the moon that was taken by a camera mounted onto one of the legs of the lunar module that landed in 1969 from the United States. We shot it up. It went to the moon. A picture got taken. I know why that picture completely 100% proves we went to the moon. What do you say? You say that it's fake. Why do you think it's fake?
Yeah. Well, because it could have easily could have been done in a stage, in a Hollywood studio or something.
1969, Pedro? Hold up. In 1969?
Yeah, why not?
Because we didn't have
why could it not be fake?
We didn't have the technology. We absolutely did not have CGI or cameras in any way, shape, or form like we do now. I know that seems hard to believe, but in the early 70s,
there was no CGI in 69.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be invented for another 20 or 30 years. But in the early 70s, we have none of the cool awesomeness that we have today. But that
I know I was there.
But that picture was created back then. So how would we create it if we don't have CGI? We couldn't have done it in a studio.
Well, could have, but the thing is,
I know why we couldn't have. I'll tell you in a second.
You could use movie props. You could use movie props and different setups to recreate that. It doesn't always necessarily need to be CGI. You could
here's the reason.
Different angles.
Pedro, here's the reason why. I know this is a really nuanced thing, and you're gonna think, why does Elliot know this about lighting? But I live in an area where there's a lot of things that go on where people are required to go out and research lights and buy lights and set up lights, and they spend all of their time talking about lights, and it's confusing to me, but they love it. Those people absolutely have tried every single possible way to recreate the shadows in that picture. And it is a physical impossibility until the last decade, in which we created white laser lights, basically, these LEDs and so forth. Because the only way that we could have gotten those shadows in that picture was for us to either have literally a floor to ceiling wall of white LEDs, which would not exist for decades.
Not in the 60s.
Or there is one other possibility. And it is that very far away, unencumbered by atmosphere, a large ball of hydrogen molecules were exploding constantly. Yeah. You get what I'm saying. Or the
hydrogen,
sun.
helium.
Yeah, you get it. The sun.
Yttrium, vanadium.
Hang on just a second, Pedro. We gotta shout out our awesome friend Ameet Mathew. Thank you so much for the $10. The conspiracy of everything. It's like the theory of everything, but way less useful. Thank you, Ameet. We always appreciate people hanging out. Sorry. Go ahead, Pedro. Sorry about that.
Sure. So I mean, I think about like the whole moon landing and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember how they had like a dune buggy up in the moon, but then they just forget to like put to account the size of the dune buggy and the size of like the space shuttle, and it's just like it just wouldn't fit. So it's like
they left it on purpose. They left the buggy on purpose.
Buggy, you know?
They left the buggy on purpose.
How did they get it there on the first place? If like the dimensions of like the shuttle would never fit a dune buggy that size.
It wasn't a shuttle.
So it's like, how did they get it there?
It wasn't there.
A shuttle.
It was in a different.
Where he
Pedro,
said that.
Hang on a second for us, brother.
Elon Musk.
Hang on.
Yeah,
Pedro. It was on a different spot. Have you ever seen the like classic rocket picture where it's like the shuttle
Saturn V?
Yeah, and then it's got like the big white tube in the middle and like two little orangey thin rockets, and then like after it explodes up and it starts like shooting all that fire and all that, it like drops some of that stuff. They do that on purpose. Like we just build it beforehand and we just put a like extra. It's almost like we put a kangaroo pouch on it and we're just like, yeah, that dune buggy will go right there.
The dune buggy sat behind the capsule itself. It was behind in containment, along with other things that were in there with it, like supplies and stuff.
Right.
So it was dropped before the capsule even landed.
Because they couldn't do it. They couldn't have landed. I mean, I guess they could have. It just was already mountains, literally mountains of paperwork. Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen those pictures of those incredible women that were like the computers at NASA back in the 60s. They had literal stacks and stacks and stacks of math that they did by hand. And I be honest, if they said, you know what, we've already done 700 pages of this math, we're not going to add a fucking dune buggy at this point, I wouldn't blame them. I mean, I get it. Like,
it's too much weight.
Yeah, right. But yeah, man, I mean, do you, I guess what upsets me a little bit is the idea that there's so many cool things out there in space, and honestly, so many problems. Like Neil and I said just kind of quickly earlier, like there's a lot of junk up there, you guys. Like there's a lot of trash right now in space.
I was about to get to that too.
Yeah, okay. You got some thoughts on trash in space? Yeah, give it to us real quick, man.
Sure. So they always claiming to have like thousands and hundreds of like space junk and satellites crashing.
Try millions.
Like and again, it's like, yeah, like you actually never like. Why don't they turn? You know, like when you see other like NASA fake missions and stuff like that. Like you never see no space junk flying by or anything. Or like why don't they turn the space the Hubble telescope around and zoom into like some space junk? Like there's just never none of that.
The Hubble, okay.
Yeah,
first of all,
Pedro, hang on.
Pedro.
You said a lot. Hang on, Neil.
The telescope, the Hubble, anyways, okay, is not designed for that. It's designed for far-reaching space, not right next to it. But there are many. There are lots of video footage, I guess, from the space station itself, the ISS, that does show little bits and pieces, because there's like bolts and screws and you name it floating around out there from all the shit that they let go when they're going out there, and bits and pieces that ultimately fall off of like satellites and stuff like that. Okay, because they have to be aware of everything. There's actually programs on the ISS that keeps account of all of those things.
Yes.
Because one of them goes through there, they're done. So they have to be aware of that stuff. It is definitely there. There's millions of pieces of that shit out there.
And there was a period of time. It's been years and years. It could be over a decade and a half at this point, but there definitely was a period of time where some really not super great thinking people at NASA decided that it would be really fun to put out a live stream website where they track all of those junk satellites.
That's right.
And then they realized how huge of a security risk that would be. So they took it down immediately because, not every idiot with a rocket should know where all of the satellites are, right? I mean, and so we do have really, really, really good information on this stuff. But I understand, like, a lot of it sounds fantastical. I mean, that's why Arthur C. Clarke said at this point, right? He's like, at this point, extremely advanced technology is synonymous with magic. I mean, I don't know how this whole internet thing works. I'm just assuming that it still is, but
so
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a really good question.
Sure.
I have a really good question, and I'm interested to hear you guys' answer to this.
Okay.
It's a really good one. So another thing that like dismisses space being real and all of that stuff, it's because Earth is like an air bubble. So, because we have like the atmosphere, we have oxygen and so on and so on.
Sure. Yeah.
So then here on Earth, when you recreate a vacuum chamber, like you get like plexiglass, like all four sides, drill
it's more than plexiglass, dude.
High pressure vacuum, and suck it out, and you create a vacuum in that vacuum chamber, and then you try to blow a bubble, it just bursts. So why is it that Earth's bubble doesn't burst if we're surrounded by a vacuum chamber or the vacuum of space all around us?
It's made from a different material than a bubble that you would blow into a vacuum chamber.
That's one.
Okay? Yeah. It has multiple layers on it. Okay.
I know an answer. It's very strange, but so a lot of people will say something similar to that, Pedro, and they'll say, well, why isn't all of our atmosphere leaking out? Well, it is, first off.
Yes, it is. Yes, right.
Second off, there's actually a really, really cool meteorologist named Maddie. She has a channel called Science Side Up, and she has a bunch of videos where she talks about this in great detail. And basically, there's this really cool phenomenon. So, have you ever mixed like oil and water together and like seen them separate?
Mm-hmm. I do it every day.
Do you know that also happens with gas? It also happens with all of this stuff hanging out with us right now. And the reason that we've got all of this gas hanging out down here at the lower level, there's a few different reasons. Like, for instance, plants and stuff are like constantly farting it out. That's the way I think of it.
Plants are.
Cows, everybody farts. But that's part of it. But the other part of it is the fact that because there's more stuff in it, that mass is higher than some of that other gas. It's just affected more by the gravity.
That's
right. And
mass
so
attracts mass.
Yeah, and so it's like a combination of a couple of different things. Because Neil had a really good point right at the beginning, which is if you have a vacuum, if you have a container and there's a vacuum inside, and you blow up a bubble, well, the bubble is actually made of something with gas inside of it. There's a thin layer around the outside of that bubble that is like soap and water and other stuff like that. And that's not actually analogous to the way that it works with the Earth.
That's right.
Does that kind of clear it up a little bit? Again, I really would suggest an actual trained meteorologist, somebody that knows about atmospheric sciences. So again, Science Side Up.
I can tell you the chemistry of the atmosphere, but
see, and I can tell you none of it. I can just pretend to look good.
Some elements are heavier than others, right? So they sit lower in the atmosphere than the other ones too.
Yeah.
There's like helium and hydrogen be way up, and then you know stuff like carbon or whatever. Well, carbon's not really a gas, but you know what I mean. The heavier the element, the lower it sits. That's why cold air will fall to the bottom of the floor and hot air will rise because there's different mixes there. Right, so
does that kind of make sense, or do you have some more questions?
No, I mean, I understand what you guys are trying to explain, but I just stick to what I know, and that's if you recreate a vacuum chamber here on Earth and you put air on it, it just gets sucked right out. Like it's just, we're in the middle of a even bigger and stronger vacuum chamber for our air.
Well,
not to get sucked out.
I don't think space is. I don't think space is a.
Doesn't seem legit.
Yeah, hang on. I don't think space is a true vacuum, is it?
It's not. It's not a true vacuum.
Right? Like they're
close
actually
as you can get.
It's as close as we seem to be able to get naturally without us doing our cool magic-y science, but it's not actually the same. Again, there is enough of a difference that we know about physically. Like we know enough about physics to say there is a noticeable difference between a true vacuum and like a
the
not
vacuum of
true
space.
vacuum. Right. And so that I think that actually
it's called the vacuum of space.
Yeah, and then another thing that makes me kind of like, because everything is backwards. Like everything that has to do with space and everything that it teaches about space is backwards, right? So, for example, like NASA
backwards?
has like an identical model of the ISS, and they submerged it underwater in a giant Olympic-sized pool, and that's where they have like their astronauts train, right?
But of course,
that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense because, like, when you're underwater, it's water pressure, which is like basically it's gonna crush you. But when you go up in space, it's the opposite. It's pulling you apart. So it's kind of like saying, I'm gonna go and train and fire for a place that is in water. It's like the complete opposite. It makes no sense. And the reason why they have the ISS underwater is because,
No, finish up. That sounded like it was the same point. Finish up real quick. I think Neil has a response.
Sure. So the point why they have the ISS underneath a giant Olympic-sized pool is because that's where they do most of the hoaxes. They just turn off the light and you can't see the water, and then they probably have like a green screen next to the ISS, and they're able to like recreate like the whole high altitude ISS space thing. And that's the reason why there's a hashtag going on saying air bubbles in space, because they were caught with like air bubbles because they knew that they were doing it underwater.
Real quick, Pedro, I just want to say this, and I'll throw it back over to Neil because I think he has a good answer as to why they do those missions, getting ready under the water. But just real quick, I want to say again, not that I'm an expert, but when it comes to videography, there's literally no way to shoot underwater in the same way that you shoot stuff in space. I just know that. Again, it's just they couldn't do that and get the videos and stuff that we have. They just couldn't, especially the ones from the 70s. They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't. It's physically impossible. Go ahead, Neil.
The reason they do the training in water is because on this planet, it's the closest thing we can get to weightlessness.
Right. And they're ultimately going to have to wear all of these suits. They're ultimately going to have to wear all of this equipment that will help them get used to the equipment that they'll have to wear whenever they're up in space and not in an oxygen-rich environment like in the shuttle or in the space station or so forth. And so it's just a really quick, easy way to I guess theoretically, they could build a building and then spin it at such an insane force, at such an insane rotation that ultimately the centripetal force causes the people inside to feel weightless like those carnival rides. But I feel like that would be a lot. I feel like that would take a lot more effort than just asking nicely for the local Olympic-sized swimming pool to let you submerge a shuttle into it.
Well, they could use the puke.
Got it.
Well, yeah, they could do that.
The vomit comet, right? Where they filmed a lot of Apollo 13 or whatever.
But Pedro, I think Neil and I don't come to the same. Oh yeah, you got one more thing before we wrap up?
Well, Pedro, you yourself were saying only go with you tend to only go with what you know, which as you said, which is great, and I think that's admirable. You can know more if you actually learn a little bit about this stuff. There's tons of places you can go to find out about this stuff. Like I would recommend maybe reading a little bit about Earth's atmosphere, how it works, the different levels of it and stuff like this. So it's entirely up to you. I mean, you have the ability to do that, and the information is there. But a very good friend of ours is asking, what do you trust? See, the thing is you got to trust someone sometime, especially when they're people that are experts in the fields, right? Nobody becomes an expert in something because it's bullshit. They want to know more, so they learn and they become an expert in that field. So like aeronautics or in my case, chemistry, stuff like that. And there are people that know what they're talking about because they've gone to school and they've done the work. And it's fascinating stuff, dude. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So my advice to you is just go dig in a little bit, man. Dig in a little bit, and you might go, holy shit, okay, that's awesome. Now I understand a little bit more. Because the best way to find your way through the actual bullshit is through knowledge, man, and learning.
But Pedro, what you got for us before we let you go, man?
I used to be fascinated with space. I used to love everything that had to do with space. And when I actually woke up and realized that all the things that they show us on TV is just CGI, none of it is real. It's all just like a bunch of cartoon
we've been
stuff.
over this.
I started waking up. I was like, all these space programs, like they have such beautiful colors, such beautiful things, but if it's not real, what's the point? And ever since that, I've been trying to search for the real thing, and I just get nothing but CGI.
Well, brother, we're gonna let you go, and I'm gonna wrap up here with Neil real quick. But again, man, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Pedro.
You got it. Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure always talking to you guys, and
it's a pleasure for us
and sharing wisdom and everything.
Call us back, man.
Get out there and investigate, my friend. Get out there and investigate. And that's half the fun.
Yeah, and I think I know kind of I think I do. I think I might be a mind reader, Neil. Let me see real quick. I think at the end there, you were kind of feeling this, you know, hey, we've discussed some of this, and we've tried to have kind of a dialogue and a move forward in all of our understandings. And I don't know if we made as much progress as I would have hoped for. Right at the end, it sounded like he was still saying, you know, it's totally fake and it's not out there. And I I want us to all remember that when we're having these dialogues, it's a good idea for us to continue to try and push for further investigation and learn more. I mean, that's the whole
Absolutely.
freaking point.
The cure to ignorance is education.
Exactly, man. And I highly, highly value the fact that, you know, we definitely were on opposing sides there. I mean, we were definitely butting heads, but at the same time, I mean, we can do so cordially. And, you know, hopefully we can learn some more. And, you know, look, if space really is fake, I want to freaking know it, and I'll own up to it when I'm wrong. But
yeah, of course.
If I'm a betting man, I'm gonna put my money on the space shuttle being a thing. How about you, man?
The space station, the ISS, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
I've watched it go over many times. So
yeah.
And just a little shout out to my producer, actually, Mr. Mikey Famine, who's in the chat right now doing the hashtag coins. Mikey, it's the wrong show, buddy.
Woo!
Wrong show.
Mikey is, I have heard, a amateur astronaut. I think he's gone up into space a couple of times.
Amateur asshole.
Oh, my bad. I got the letters mixed up. It's a problem.